Hello friends, welcome to my online lecture. I am Dr. Swati Singh, Head Department of English from S.V.K.T College, Devlali Camp. Till now, we have covered what is a poem, difference between the language of poetry and language of prose, and we have also covered different types of poem. Today's session agenda, what all we are going to do in this session. First, we will understand the objective from this session. Second, I'll make you understand what is ballad, features of romantic period and Keats as a romantic poet, and then we will read the complete text of the poem and we will comprehend the poem. Today's objective, as I told, we are going to understand what we call or what do we understand by the word ballad. Keats as a romantic poet, La Belle, Merci as a finest example of lyrical ballad, and then in the end we will analyze the whole poem. First, let's see what is ballad. A ballad is a poem or a song narrating a story in a short stanza, a form of verse, often a narrative set to music. Ballad derived from the medieval French chanson, ballade or ballad, which are originally dance songs. The form was often used by poets and composers from 18th century onwards to produce lyrical ballads. It means a poem which is in a narrative form which shows a story in a dance form, that is called ballad, and it started from 18th century in English literature. Now, romantic period and John Keats. John Keats was an English poet of 19th century, and later on this period was to be known as romantic period. The romantic period is not just about love stories. It was a political, social as well as literary movement. Whenever critics talk about the romantic period and romantic poets, they usually focus on the big six. And what are these big six? These are the name of 6 poets: 1. William Blake, William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge were the oldest of these 6 poets. The younger generation includes Percy by Shelley, Lord Byron and John Keats. Keats was the youngest of the 6, but he was, alas, the first one to die. He was hardly 25 years of age when he died of tuberculosis in February 1821. John Keats and his life. When Keats found out that he caught tuberculosis from nursing his brother Tom, he was in big despair because a diagnosis of tuberculosis in those days was like a death sentence. Keats felt that he had just made a breakthrough in his writing. He was only beginning to write the kind of poetry he was really capable of writing. But he passed away. He asked that he grave bear only the words, "Here lies one whose name was written in water," because he didn't think that he had lived up to his potential. His life was too short to be memorable, and his poetry was like words written in water. He is celebrated as one of the most famous English poets of all time, despite his premature death. Now let's see the background of the poem. The name of the poem is La Belle Dame sans Merci, was written by Keats, and it was towards the end of his life. Keats wrote it in 1819, but it was not published until 1820. The version that was published includes a lot of changes recommended by his friend Leigh Hunt. The original version begins with line, "Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms," while the edited version in 1820 opens with, "Ah, what can ail thee, the wretched wit." La Belle Dame sans Merci by John Keats. Now we will go through the original text, which is written by John Keats. The poem starts, "Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and plainly loitering? The sage has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard, so woe-begone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest is done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose, fast withered too. Then I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, a bracelets too, and fragrant Joan. She looked at me as she did love, and she made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long. For sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy song. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La Belle Dame sans Merci, thee hath in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloom, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke, found me here on the cold hillside, and this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sage is withered from the lake, and no bird sings. If we superficially see, we feel that this is a love poem. Whereas when we go deep in the poem, we see something else. So let's see what this poem is all about. It seems on the surface that it is one of the romantic poem about knight who fall in love with the beautiful ladies. But in this poem, the man in question is literally on the verge of death because of his romantic encounter with this woman. She didn't stab him or anything of that sort, but the poem explicit about why the knight is dying. It is left partly on readers' imagination. Now, let's see what we should learn from this poem. What is that one thing which is killing this knight? Why this beautiful lady who seemed to be in love with this king is not there around him, or why the condition of this knight is like this? The poem is about the danger of obsession. In general, romantic or erotic obsession. And it is a message for the reader that we should avoid such type of obsession. Keats seems to suggest that the fate of his knight at arms could have happened to any one of us at any time. So whenever you are tempted to neglect your own responsibilities in order to feed an obsession, you should keep thinking about what happened to the knight at arms in Keats' poem. Now, let's see the summary of this poem. What overall we get from this poem, or what is the message of Keats in this poem? In this poem, an unidentified speaker asks a knight what afflicts him. The knight is pale and haggard and obviously dying. The knight answers that he met a beautiful lady who had looked at him as if she is in love with him. When he sat her on his horse, she led him to her cave. There she had sung him to sleep. In his sleep, he had nightmarish dream, pale kings, pale princes and warriors who informed him that he had been enslaved by this beautiful but cruel lady. When he awoke, the lady was not there. She had already left, and this knight is on this cold hillside all alone. Now, let's critically analyze this poem. First, we'll see the form. The form of this poem is a ballad. This is a medieval genre revived by the Romantic poets. Keats uses so-called ballad stanza, a quatrain, in a alternating iambic tetrameter and trimeter lines. Keats uses a number of stylistic characteristics of the ballad, such as simplicity of language, repetition, and absence of details like some of the old ballads, and it deals with supernaturals. Keats sets his simple story of love and death in a bleak, wintry landscape that is appropriate to it. The sage has just withered from the lake and no bird sings. The repetition of these two lines with minor variation emphasizes the fate of that unfortunate knight and neatly encloses the poem in a frame by bringing it to its beginning. In keeping with the ballad's tradition, Keats does not identify his questioner or the knight or the descriptive beautiful lady. What Keats does, he does not include in his poem, contributes as much to it in arousing the reader's imagination as what he puts into it. La Belle, Dame sans Merci, the beautiful lady without mercy, is a femme fatale, a circle-like figure who attracts lovers only to destroy them by her supernatural powers. She destroys because it is her nature to destroy. Keats could have found pattern of his fairy child in folk mythology, classical literature, Renaissance poetry, or the medieval ballad. With few skillful touches, he creates a woman who is at once beautiful, erotically attractive, and fascinating, but deadly at the same time. Some readers see the poem as critics' personal rebellion against the pain of love. In his letters and in some of his poems, he reveals that he experienced the pain of love as well as the pleasure of love, that he resented the pain, particularly the loss of freedom that came with falling in love. However, the ballad is very objective in this form. Though we may find some instances where we feel that Keats is presenting his own pain in this ballad, but from my knowledge, it is purely objective and it must be read La Belle, Dame sans Merci as pure story and nothing else. How Keats felt about his love for Fanny Brown we can discover in several other poems as he addressed as well as in his letters. But this particular poem, La Belle, Dame sans Merci, is purely a lyrical ballad having all the qualities of a ballad, which has supernatural power, which has few questions unanswered to be left on reader's imagination. So, this is overall poem we have discussed. We have understood what is ballad. We have gone through the main features and characteristics of romantic period. We have seen different themes in La Belle, Dame sans Merci. We have seen the pain of Keats, but we have kept this poem as purely objective from ballad point of view. Now, for this session assignment, there are two things you have to do. First, you have to note down different qualities, characteristics of ballad. What you can do, you can write the definition of ballad first and then you can write 2-3 characteristics of the ballad. And second assignment of this session is theme or different themes or various themes in the poem La Belle, Dame sans Merci by John Keats. So today we have covered in this session what is lyrical ballad, main features of lyrical ballads and different themes in the poem. Now for next session, because till now we have covered poetry, different poems and ballad as a form. In next session, we will start with fiction, short story as a literary form and how it is different from novel. Then we will see the origin of short story and elements of short story. So these are the few points which we'll be covering in the next session. Thank you.